You don't even have a real job. Just get out. You work from home. Freeloader, my sister screamed while my parents nodded in agreement. They had moved into my house uninvited, taken over my space, and now had the audacity to kick me out because my puppy had an accident on clothes carelessly left on the floor. As I packed my bags and left with my beloved Chihuahua, Max, I smiled, knowing what they didn't. I had finally put the house in my name last month and was about to teach them all a valuable lesson about respect. I'm Daniel, a 34-year-old professional software developer. 5 years ago, I switched from corporate life to freelancing, creating custom e-commerce solutions for clients worldwide. My home office setup allows me to work efficiently while maintaining an excellent work-life balance. My income is more than sufficient. My client list is impressive, and I genuinely love what I do. My comfortable 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood was originally owned by my late grandfather, who left it to me in his will with the stipulation that the property transfer would occur on my 34th birthday. 4 years, I lived there as the designated beneficiary, but the official title remained in my grandfather's estate until recently. The invasion began unexpectedly on a Tuesday morning in March. I was on a video call with an important international client when the doorbell rang repeatedly, followed by aggressive knocking. After quickly excusing myself, I opened the door to find my parents standing there with 4 large suitcases. "Daniel, there you are," my mother exclaimed without even a greeting. "We decided to move in. The condo's been sold, and we close next week." I stood there, stunned. "What? You sold your condo? Why didn't you tell me?" My father brushed past me, wheeling 2 suitcases inside. "We mentioned it at Christmas, remember? Anyway, we got a great offer, couldn't pass it up." They had most certainly not mentioned this at Christmas or any other time, but before I could formulate a response, they were already touring the house, discussing which bedroom they would take and what furniture of mine needed to be upgraded. "Mom, Dad, I'm in the middle of a work call. We need to talk about this, but I can't right now," I explained, trying to remain calm. "All that computer stuff you do," my mother said dismissively. "Well, go back to your little games, we'll get settled in." With no choice but to return to my client, I reluctantly left them to continue their invasion. By the time my call ended 40 minutes later, they had already rearranged my living room and kitchen to their liking. The conversation that followed was frustrating and one-sided. According to them, they had always planned to move in with me after selling their condo. In their mind, since the house technically still belonged to my grandfather's estate at that time, they had just as much right to live there as I did, despite the fact that I had been the sole occupant for 5 years and my grandfather had so clearly stated his intentions. "We're your parents, Daniel, you can't just leave us homeless," my mother said tearfully when I suggested they should have discussed this with me first. "You have all this space just for yourself. It's selfish," my father added. Trapped by familial obligation and their tearful manipulation, I reluctantly agreed to a temporary arrangement until they found a new place. Little did I know that temporary in their vocabulary meant permanent. The criticism started sly at first, comments about my work schedule, questioning whether I was actually working when they saw me at my computer, remarks about how my cousin Edward, their favorite comparison, had a real job with benefits at an accounting firm. "I don't understand why you sit at home all day," my mother would say while interrupting me during important calls. "People your age should be in an office, building a career." "I have built a career, Mom," I'd explain patiently. "I make more now than I did at my corporate job, and I have better work-life balance." "If you say so," she'd reply doubtfully. "I just worry about your future." 3 weeks into their stay, with no signs of them house hunting, my sister Megan appeared on our doorstep with her own set of luggage. "Craig and I are separating," she announced, walking past me without waiting for an invitation. "Mom said I could stay here for a while." Once again, I wasn't consulted. Once again, I was outvoted 3-1 when I objected. Megan, who worked as an administrative assistant at a local company, immediately aligned with our parents in criticizing my lifestyle. "Must be nice to roll out of bed and call it going to work," she'd sneer as I headed to my home office at 7 a.m., earlier than she left for her job. "At least I have a real job where people can see me working," she'd say at dinner, despite the fact that I earned considerably more than she did. My attempts to explain the nature of remote work fell on deaf ears. In their minds, if I wasn't commuting to an office building, I wasn't really working, I was playing on the computer. 2 months into this unwanted cohabitation, my mental health was suffering. My once peaceful home had become a constant source of stress. My work productivity was declining due to frequent interruptions and the general tension in the house. That's when my friend Lisa called with an unexpected opportunity. Her family's Chihuahua had just had puppies, and she knew I'd always wanted a dog. "They're ready for homes now," she said. "There's a little black one with the sweetest personality. I think he'd be perfect for you." In a moment of impulse, perhaps seeking some companionship that wouldn't criticize me, I said yes. I agreed. Max entered my life the next day, a tiny bundle of energy and unconditional love. My family's reaction was predictably negative. "You brought a dog into the house without asking us?" my mother exclaimed, as if it wasn't actually my house. "Dogs smell," my father complained. "And who's going to clean up after it?" "I will," I assured them. "Max is my responsibility. I'll take care of everything." "You can barely take care of yourself," Megan muttered. "This is so typical of you, making impulsive decisions." Despite their initial objections, Max's charm proved difficult to resist. Within days, I'd catch my mother sneaking him treats and my father letting him curl up on his lap during evening TV. Even Megan would play with him when she thought no one was watching. For a brief while, Max seemed to bring a truce to our household. But the peace was short-lived. The incident occurred on a Friday afternoon. I had stepped out to pick up a prescription, leaving Max at home. I asked Megan to keep an eye on him since she was home from work early that day. When I returned, the house was in chaos. Megan was screaming, holding a blouse that had apparently been on her bedroom floor. Max had had an accident on it, a relatively minor issue that could be solved with a simple wash. "Your stupid dog ruined my new blouse," she shrieked when I walked in. "You need to pay for this." "If you had watched him like I asked, or if you hadn't left your clothes on the floor, this wouldn't have happened," I replied, trying to remain calm. "How dare you blame me? This is all because you don't train your dog properly." My parents quickly joined the fray, taking Megan's side. "This is why pets are a responsibility you weren't ready for," my father lectured. "If you can't control that animal, it needs to go," my mother added. The argument escalated, with all three of them hurling insults, not just about Max but about my career, my lifestyle, and my character. "You don't even contribute anything to this household," Megan shouted, conveniently forgetting that I paid all the utilities and groceries. "We don't need you anymore," she continued, her face red with anger. "Get out. You work from home freeloader." My parents, instead of calming the situation, joined in. "That's right, Daniel. Maybe you should leave if you can't be respectful." Something inside me snapped. After months of intrusion, criticism, and disrespect, all while living in my home, this was the final straw. "Fine," I said quietly. "If that's how you feel, I'll leave." Their expressions showed momentary surprise. They hadn't expected me to agree so readily, but that surprise would be nothing compared to what was coming. I packed a suitcase with essentials, gathered Max's supplies, and calmly walked out. I checked into a pet-friendly hotel and made a few important phone calls. First, to my lawyer, confirming what I already knew. As the legal owner of the house, the title had finally transferred to me on my birthday the previous month. I had every right to decide who lived there. Second, to a property management company I'd researched weeks ago when I first started contemplating an exit strategy. 3 days later, Megan called in a panic. "Daniel, what is going on? Some company left an eviction notice saying we have to vacate the property in 30 days. "Yes, that's correct," I replied calmly. But they said the owner is selling the house." "How can that happen?" "Grandpa's estate." "The house isn't in Grandpa's estate anymore, Megan. It was transferred to me last month, just as his will specified. That happened on my 34th birthday. I am the legal owner, and yes, I've decided to sell it." The silence on the other end was deeply satisfying. You can't do this," she finally stammered. "We have nowhere to go." "That sounds like a personal problem," I replied, echoing the phrase she had often used when dismissing my concerns. Perhaps she should have thought about that before telling me to get out of my own house. My mother got on the phone next, alternating between tears and anger. "How could you do this to your own family? The same family that moved into my home without proper discussion, criticized my career daily, and then kicked me and my dog out? That family?" My father tried threats about family ties and inheritance, but we both knew they had no legal ground to stand on. In the end, they had no choice but to leave. My parents moved into a small apartment that strained their retirement budget. Megan, unable to afford a place of her own, had to move in with a friend from work, sleeping on a couch and paying whatever rent she could manage with her real job. The new beginning. I didn't sell the house after all. Once they were gone, I moved back in, had it thoroughly cleaned, and reclaimed my space. I made a few renovations, including converting one bedroom into a dedicated office with soundproofing and another into a guest room, one that would never be available to certain family members. Max thrived in the peaceful environment, quickly becoming fully house-trained without the stress and inconsistency of my family's presence. My business flourished too, without constant interruptions and criticism. I secured several new clients and expanded my services. My parents and Megan eventually reached out with reluctant apologies, clearly hoping to repair the relationship enough to potentially move back in someday. I maintained polite but distant contact, making it clear that while I was open to gradually rebuilding our relationship, cohabitation was permanently off the table. But we're family, my mother protested during a carefully controlled coffee meeting 3 months later. Yes, we are, I agreed, and family should respect each other's boundaries, careers, and life choices. When you're ready to do that, we can work on being a family again. As I drive home from these occasional family meetings, Max always greets me at the door with unbridled enthusiasm, no criticism, no judgment, just pure joy. Sometimes, the smallest companions provide the greatest lessons about what truly matters: respect, appreciation, and unconditional support. In the end, the house that became a battleground has transformed back into a home, on my terms. And if there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that standing up for yourself isn't just about asserting ownership of physical property, it's about claiming the right to live your life according to your own values, free from those who would diminish your choices. Max seems to agree. He has a particular way of tilting his head whenever I tell him, "We did the right thing, buddy." I like to think it's his way of saying, "Of course we did. Now, how about that walk you promised?"